had the blacks not allowed the so-called civil rights movement to sell them over to the government for $1 bill and allow them to become leaders of the blacks, but kept the family intact as they were for the most part prior to the civil rights movement, which was the worst thing that ever happened to the blacks. Had the blacks not sold themselves over to the civil rights movement, do you think they would still be in the condition that they are in today? Or would the family be tired? Would they be treating everybody the way they would like to be treated?
You know, that's interesting that you would say that, because I know somebody who, well, I know a few people actually who would agree with you. I know people who would not agree with you. And where I would stand with that, I wouldn't say that I would agree with you on that, but like, I know where you're coming from, because you're coming from Alabama. And a guy in particular, I won't name him, but he was a pretty famous guy. He was from Mississippi, from Laurel, Mississippi, where the Klan were the ones who murdered those 3 civil rights workers.
Right.
You know, Schwerner, Goodman, and Cheney. Okay, and he knew the Klansmen who ordered that murder. Anyway, I had the same conversation with him. He told me they never should have come down here and stirred up all that stuff trying to get black people to vote and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And he's black himself.
Yeah.
And I said, how can you say that? Why? And he says, look, they can come down here and start all this trouble, and then they can go home, and we got to live with it, right? But my question to him was, well, did you like riding in the back of the bus, drinking from a separate water fountain, not being able to eat in this restaurant and stay in that hotel? He said, that would have changed in time.
Absolutely.
But I say, well, how much time?
It doesn't matter. It wouldn't change.
It does matter, because people should be treated equally.
But listen, when those things were happening, I can honestly tell you there wasn't much thought about it, because blacks were not comparing themselves to the whites and all that kind of stuff. So they weren't into, well, I'm black, why can't I drink that? I'm sure you find some people who did it, but most part, they wouldn't think about those things. When I was drinking at an all-black fountain, I never thought about, oh, poor me, I gotta drink at a colored people fountain. Or when I went to a movie theater once down in Eufaula, Alabama, and we had to sit in the balcony, and I was in my teens then, I never thought about, oh, poor me, I had to sit in the balcony. It felt better because I could see the film better. It wasn't, I thought we were fortunate to sit there. And so it wasn't, and when that civil rights movement thing started, the older blacks were like, don't be a part of that mess. All they're doing is stirring up trouble for themselves. They knew not to be a part of it because they knew it was a socialist mess, and it was just dividing the races because they would have come together naturally.
But why should there be trouble if you or I want to go drink from a nice water fountain? Why
but the black water fountain, the black water fountain was as nice as the white one, and the water changes the same. It was no different.
But why couldn't we use the same water fountain is my question.
Because that was the standard at that time. But there were whites and blacks.
But you believe it was an acceptable standard, that we should have accepted it?
It was neither accepted or rejected. It's just the way it was, right? Because back then, black people and white people knew that it wasn't about the color. It was about the character. It was about the ones that had hate and the ones that didn't. And those that didn't have hatred for one another, whatever color, they got along. And those that did have the hatred, not only did they not get along with different people of color, they didn't even get along with their own family members or anyone else, because evil divides and love unites. So it wasn't until the so-called civil rights movement started that all the mess started. And now we know that it was a socialist communist movement. It never was meant to unite the people. It was always meant to divide for personal gain, wealth, position in politics, and that's why they set themselves up over the blacks, and the blacks stopped thinking for themselves.
Well, what was the movement to keep blacks in the back of the bus or drink at separate water fountains or use separate restrooms? Wasn't that also divisive?
It was divisive, but it was the way it was, and it wasn't personal.
No, it wasn't the way it was. It was the way it was created.
But still, the people understood it because they had common sense back then, and they knew that it was changing, and it was changing. But the civil rights movement wanted to control the people. If you notice, not only did they divide the people, with blacks and whites are more divided today than any other time before that. And then they set themselves up as leaders of the blacks. And the blacks turned, not all, but most turned themselves over to them. And they stopped thinking for themselves and doing for themselves because it's abnormal to have a physical leader over you. So they gave up God as their leader for the man or the woman to be their leader.
When you were a young man, a teenager or young adult down in Alabama, and a white man or white woman was talking to you, asking you questions or whatever, did you look her or him in the face?
I did.
Or did you look down?
I looked right at him.
Okay, because a lot of black people, even today, older black people, not young ones, older ones will not look a white person in the face.
And you know why that is?
Tell me.
They're afraid of their mothers and grandmothers. Their mothers and grandmothers imposed their wills on them when they were little kids, and they forbidden them to speak up. They forbidden them to disagree. And as a result, they resented their mothers for doing that to them. And every time they run into other people now, they don't have the courage because they're dealing with evil spirits in the same people. And they don't have the courage to look you in the eyes. But if you wasn't divided like that, you had no fear.
Are you saying that their mothers and grandmothers forbid them to speak up or to look somebody in the face that was white, or just in general?
In general, to look them in the face. Don't talk back to me like that. I'm your mama. I'm grown. You the baby. And they intimidated the kids. And as a result of that, they're not able to look up not only at their mothers and grandmothers, but no one because they have fear.
Yeah, but I mean, I know parents today who tell their kids, hey, you don't backtalk me,
right?
You don't sass me,
and those people are evil.
But they'll look you in the face.
But they're destroying their children, though. They're destroying them by doing that to them because everything starts in the home. And if our parents are perfect, meaning that they have perfect love, they're of God, they wouldn't intimidate the children like that and then blame it on somebody else.
Did you? So then, as a full-grown man in Alabama, did you resent some young white boy calling you boy?
They never called me boy.
Did they call you sir?
I never had a white person. I remember I never had a white person in Alabama call me boy or sir. They called me Jesse, no matter what I was.
Well,
if I was out and about, like downtown somewhere, they would say, sir, may I help you? Or sir, this. Like I would do, or anyone do now when they go into a business. But I would never call Boyd. I would never call the N-word. Except one time in Chicago, I was walking downtown Chicago, me and a bunch of guys, and some white guys drove by, and they're like, N-word. But we just thought that was funny. It wasn't personal because it was on them and not us. Mm-hmm. We were raised that way.